Avery, whose show is this? And we're live. Welcome everybody here to the Lakers Lounge podcast. I'm Anthony Irwin, senior Lakers insider for Clutch Points. Joined. I'm not taking Brett Siegel's job. I think he's the reporter, general NBA reporter, general NBA insider, and then I'm the senior Lakers insider for Clutch Points. Still getting used to those things. Joined on this fine. What is it, a Tuesday afternoon in Southern California, Tuesday late afternoon here where I am, by Harrison Fagan, he of SB Nation. Let me take a guess at your title. Head of professional basketball for SB Nation. Yeah?
Pretty close.
Yeah?
Close enough.
What did I miss? Where did I mess up?
Well, so I'm actually technically the vice president of basketball operations and general manager.
We're box.
Yeah.
How's it going? Like, is that a difficult positions to hold?
You know, I will say probably a job that should be done by two people. You know, it's like I have to sign all the players and I have to do the scouting, but also like manage the business stuff. It's like, you know, I just wish like I had a Kurt Rambis, you know, like to help me out and be the unofficial.
Or at the very least, a Linda Rambis, right? Like, today on the show, we are going to be taking up, a portion of your day. We're going to try to distract you from today's events. I know I welcome the distraction from today's events. Today,
oh,
being
you mean the
election
Joel
day.
Embiid suspension?
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. Joel Embiid got suspended for apparently 3 games so far. I would imagine the union will appeal, and it will. I would guess he misses a game, which, like, by the way, he's probably going to miss anyway. Like, if Joel's probably looking at it, is like, oh, cool, another night off.
Yeah, they should. You know, no joke. My theory on why they leaked today, or if maybe it was late yesterday, that he's like ramping up for a Wednesday return, was so that they can be like, well, no, he was going to be ready to play on Wednesday. So I guess, sorry, he's just suspended. I guess the suspension starts now.
Yeah. So my guess is he winds up not missing technically any time, which, by the way, is fine with me. Like, that reporter had it coming. So, you know, here
Columnist,
we are.
I think we should clarify.
Columnist, yeah. He had it coming. Frankly, lucky he didn't get more, considering how big Joel Embiid is and how offensive the stuff was that guy wrote. Today, though, we're going to be talking about the state of the Lakers right now, coming off of the loss to the Detroit Pistons and the very much roller coaster feeling start to the season here. We're going to be talking about the sky. Last night, if you guys were tuned into the show, you could hear the literal sky falling all around me out here because we had one of the craziest storms I have had since we've lived out here in Texas. And we're going to be asking now, you know, hypothetically, is the sky falling around the Lakers? And when it would be time to be hitting the panic button. A version of that conversation that we're going to be having, or a branch of that conversation that we're going to be having. I want to count how many NBA players the Lakers actually have on their roster. And you know, just to give people some insight into why I freaked out the way I did over the summer. And then at the very end of it, I'm going to laugh at some recent, not like the reporting itself, because I like Jake quite a bit, but apparently teams are now interested in Jaylen Hood-Schifino when, you know, they haven't been for the last 2 years. So all of that stuff here to come here in a bit. A reminder, please do hit that subscribe button wherever it is that you guys are watching. If you guys are watching live on Twitter, head on over to youtube.com/@Lakers Lounge, where you could find the show there. If you guys are listening to this in the morning in audio form, please hit subscribe anywhere it is that you get your podcast, and preferably on Odyssey. Yeah, tell your friends, rate and review all that stuff, but tell your friends about the show, tell your friends that you love it, tell your enemies that you hate it. And we'll see which version of that conversation is more productive. So, Harrison, I'm going to ask you, coming off of that loss to the Detroit Pistons, in which LeBron played 40 minutes, Anthony Davis played 39, and the Lakers were still down by double digits for the vast majority of the game. Is it time to panic, or when would you start panicking?
I mean, describing both of them as playing 40 minutes is, like they were on the floor for 40 minutes, I would say. I think both of them played about, 15 minutes, like
Yeah.
actual basketball, and like where they were trying really hard and trying to, take that game over and make it happen. So, I mean, it's I'm not sounding the alarms yet. Just because like I think the Pistons are a little better than people expected going into the year.
Well, they
Certainly
have a coach who wants to be
expected.
there.
Yeah, well, sometimes that helps, it turns out. A coach who makes adjustments and, doesn't hate his players. All kinds of, important factors like that. But I think the Lakers clearly did not take them very seriously going into the game. And, that bit them on the ass. It turns out you can't play terrible basketball for 3 quarters and then hope that, you can have like a really good fourth and sort of bail yourself out. Like it almost worked. They got it back within 5, but their Lakers are not that good of a team where they can play with their food for 3 quarters of the game and still come out on top. So it's one of these things where like, obviously last night was not good. I don't feel like great about the Lakers coming out of that or anything. And, that is sort of, to me, that's the first sort of like lifeless game that I think that we've gotten under JJ. And I wonder how much of that has to do with, hey, 2 days off in Toronto, a couple of the guys were already sick or dealing with little injuries or whatever, not that amped up for like a Monday game in Detroit. Like I want to see if it's a trend or if this is something that happens more often, but it certainly was not. Yeah. Like it wasn't a good sign for them by any means. I'm not at panic mode yet. I think that there were contextual factors for last night that would lead lots of NBA teams to have a letdown sort of like last night, especially when considering that AD apparently is a little gimpy and LeBron has been dealing with that illness for the last like week or so, and so
Yeah, I don't know. I guess it all really depends on how you felt about the team going into it, right? Like panicking has everything to do with your expectations coming in. And so, like, if you expected the Lakers to be roughly a 500 team, well, then losing to the Detroit Pistons in a game that they didn't seem to care about until the last, like, 10 minutes or so of it, that's what happens to 500 teams. So I don't know that I'm necessarily panicking that the Lakers look like a 500 team or are currently, I think, just about a 500 team. Now, if you had aspirations of winning a championship this year, or if you had any thought to the Lakers making a deeper playoff run or winning significantly more games this year than they won last year, then I would probably say it's probably time to panic, right? Because of Anthony Davis saying that apparently he's been dealing with a left ankle injury for months now, plural, dating back to the Olympics.
To his credit, I would not have been able to tell until last night. So if it's something that he's been dealing with for months, he clearly tweaked it a little bit more last night, because it's like, I mean, he looked as good as he has in a Laker uniform for the first several games of the season. So, I mean, maybe this is something that he's been like, quote unquote, dealing with, but the concerning thing is that it looked a lot worse last night.
Yeah. I mean, he's always reacted more to pain than most NBA players, and I would say, or the average
True,
NBA
but he
player.
was like physically limping. Like it wasn't just like, ow, this hurts. It was like, I am not moving the same as I was before.
Well, no, I mean that, like, Adam and I used to have conversations about like Jokic and how like somehow the guy looks like a Pillsbury doughboy, but is always somehow like beating AD up and down the floor. And like my running theory is that like Jokic just has a higher pain tolerance. He's like the youngest son who has those 2 crazy people for older for older brothers. Like that dude was probably beat to hell all the time as a kid and probably has crazy pain tolerance at this point in his life. And like a lot of times, when people say like that, when people just kind of use toughness as a blanket word there for these things, like what you're talking about a lot of times is pain tolerance, and like how
Yeah.
willing are you to run through the pain of, you know, the cramps here and there, or really pushing through the fatigue there, you know?
Well, cramps are pretty hard to run through.
True. I mean,
Yeah.
yeah.
That was a
I
bad example. I'm just saying,
maybe
like,
some
yeah,
maybe like no, I meant more like I don't mean like the cramps that like carve up your leg, but I'm talking about like
yeah, yeah, yeah. Okay,
you
I
know,
was
like
gonna
a
say that
side
would be
cramp. Like you're like,
you're like,
man, this kind of
okay,
sucks.
yeah,
I'm tired, you know. Like I do kind of wonder, you know. Now look, he deals with pain better than you or I do. I want to be absolutely clear. We're
low
grading
bar, but sure.
on a very, very different scale here. But I'm talking about like by NBA player standards. It might be possible that like if this thing is something that he has been dealing with, he might be dealing with the kind of thing that like every NBA player always deals with, because they push their bodies harder than 99.9999999 and a bunch of other nines% of humanity. Um, so maybe that's what's going on. But like if you're talking about, you know, going back to the expectations thing, if, you know, like the conversation I had with Pete, where he was saying that like a 5-game jump, you know, JJ Redick could be the difference in winning 5 games this year compared to last year. That is a big jump, like to point to one factor for, right? And so if you're going into the season thinking to yourself that the Lakers are now going to go from 47 wins last year to 52 wins this year, and they go out and look as listless as they do against Detroit, and their bench looks as just bad as it has so far, that's where I would start to say like, okay, maybe even if you don't want to use the term, you know, the semantic panic, even if you want to just say maybe I should, you know, draw back those expectations a little bit. Instead of 52 wins, maybe I should start hoping for 50. Maybe I should start hoping for 48 or 49, you know. Cuz like it I and this is the thing that like Pete and I were talking about, like it's hard for me to look at the same roster, or in the opinion I've held this whole
Almost the
time,
same. Yeah, very, very little difference.
a worse roster in my opinion, you know, now than it was last year. Um like it's hard for me to look at a worse roster and then point to a rookie coach and be like, "Yep, yeah, for sure. They're winning 5 more games." Totally. You know? Like and so for me when I come into the season and I'm expecting a very similar season to last year, even granting that JJ is probably going to be better at this than Darvin was, I'm going to be like, "Uh, I hope so. I sure
Yeah,
hope so, but I probably still land at about 47-ish wins or so."
yeah. I mean, I think that the thing that we couldn't have necessarily projected for, is that number one, that like Max Christie is apparently just like bad at basketball now. So, or at least
Or hates
currently.
basketball. He appears to hate basketball.
Yeah. So, I mean, would not have expected that. That was sort of like an unexpected, like the fact that I'm sitting here and kind of hearing you and hearing Raj out on like the sad Cam Reddish victory lap. Which really, if you're victory lapping over Cam Reddish to getting into the rotation, that's not a victory lap. That's a defeat lap. That's like,
It's a lap. It's just a lap.
yeah, you're just taking a lap. It's it's just the fact that I'm sitting here and I'm like, honestly, I kind of get it. I understand why JJ is, going to Cam here. And, again, would not have projected that. I thought that Max was sort of, was a guy that looked pretty good in limited minutes last year and should have gotten more opportunity. And just he's been terrible this year to start the season. And so, there's that. And then there's also just the fact that like the West is better. Not that this is like a huge factor in the Lakers 4-3 start, because pretty much all the losses have been to East Coast teams. But I didn't necessarily expect their record to be a whole lot better because number one, as you said, the roster's the same, if not arguably worse. And no matter how much of it you think JJ Redick is as coach, you probably lose just as many wins by more teams being serious this year and being back. And so I think this is going to be, with this roster, a tough year for the Lakers to, sort of make major headway in terms of like climbing up the standings from where they've been the last several years. I think they're about as good as they were last year. And with maybe a little bit better coaching, which is like, fringe, maybe super dark horse championship contender. Like if everything breaks right and you get some injuries to other teams or whatever, you could put yourself in a position. But this team is not there yet. They need another move before you can sort of put them on that echelon.
Somebody said perfectly define the lap that you're running for Cam Reddish here. It's the early high school PE run the mile lap. You know, you have to.
Those were rough. Like I don't know how in shape you were in middle school. I was not. That was tough.
Oh, really? I
yeah.
ran track, so like I was actually.
Oh,
It
no,
wasn't
yeah,
until like I graduated college that like things really went downhill. But I was like a sub 6 mile runner at one point. You know.
yeah, no, I was not. You know.
You can ask Jen, like, you know, at one point, and you could see, like, you could look at the look that she'll have in her eyes. It's like, yeah, at one time, Fred had more packs. Currently has 1 pack. You know?
Yeah, unfortunately, she gave you like the Zach LaVine contract or Jeremy Grant contract, you know.
Or the Max Christie contract.
Oh God. Let's not go there yet. Come on, man. It's year 1. He could, you know, he could rebound. Maybe it'll be okay. I still believe in you, Max. You could do this.
Zach LaVine's at least productive now. Jeremy Grant, like people love him in Portland.
You just have to learn to like basketball again, okay? We can get you there.
Max Christie got paid and was like, woo!
Mission accomplished.
All right. No, I what do you think about like the relative like nature of panicking here? Do you think that that's like, or do you think this is something that is more kind of you know, it isn't as relative. It does pertain to everybody, no matter what your expectations are. There either are times to panic or there aren't.
I'm not sure that I understand the question.
Well, like all right, so I'm saying, because I'm sure there are people listening, right, who hear me say, because I had lower expectations of the Lakers this year, I am not panicking. But I'm sure that there are people here listening who would be like, well, how could you not have higher expectations of a team with Anthony Davis and LeBron James on it? Isn't that in and of itself kind of panicking even before like I've been in this kind of hypothetical, I am always in a state of panic, and therefore
the show. I mean, is that not the most honest encapsulation of the Lakers lounge? I'm always in a state of panic. It's like, even when the team started out the season undefeated, you're like, yeah, but the Gabe Vincent minutes, I don't know, man.
Was I wrong?
I mean, you ended up being right, but it shows that you are in a perpetual state of panic. If anything,
I am looking for things to panic about. Again, it's parenthood. Like, it's just,
you were like this before you had kids.
That's true. Why it was preparation. It was parenthood preparation. It was just like I was working towards the dad bod before I had kids, and then now I have kids, and it's like it's okay. It's accepted.
I mean, to your point, like that's the indictment of the roster, is that I think that, you know, expectations going into this year with LeBron and AD on your team, even as well as they played in the Olympics, and even with, you know, someone who we all hoped would be a coaching upgrade, seems to be so far, even though it's early, you know, I think that it's sort of an indictment of the rest of the roster around them. It's just like not all that great. Like they need a consolidation trade. Like they have sort of a lot of very limited sort of tools, guys, that it's like, okay, you know, if you need like this sort of very specific narrow situation, it's like maybe Gabe Vincent helps here. But if you need like a flamethrower, then that's like D'Angelo Russell, but also he's going to get picked on defense. And so it's like, let's go to Austin, but okay, he's actually not that great of a playmaker. And so I don't know what to do about this. They have a lot of guys that have like, that are like 1 or 2 trick ponies. And they need some more sort of versatile guys, but those are the hardest guys to get. And so they've been trying to sort of Frankenstein's monster cobble that together by getting as many different tools as they can give JJ Redick. But then you're basically like, hey, rookie head coach, insert the exact right fitting lineups with a very unique roster at every single point during the game to give us a chance to win. And that's sort of a tough ask. And so I do think that at some point, you know, if they want to get actually serious about contending, they need to, you know, sort of trade in your Gabe Vincent and Jalen Hood-Schifino contract with some picks, with plus, maybe Vando or whoever to get salary, whatever's required to get salary up, and just be like, okay, we're taking some of these pieces that don't work and we're consolidating these into one higher end player and trying to basically replace the other guys and their sort of limited skill sets with, like, hopefully we can get buyout guys type of thing.
I mean, where they stand right now, isn't it just kind of the natural end result of letting a bunch of assets expire?
Well, yeah.
Like, I mean, I know it's not the best for the podcast audience or for the podcast itself, but like, isn't this all of this kind of the like the natural end result of a lot of bad habits that the Lakers have had?
I saw somebody made the point to me yesterday on Twitter. They're like, man, it's crazy how the Bucks in just like a couple moves went from like perennial contender to like sort of terrible. And I'm like, yeah, that must suck if a team that won a title just like that you root for just like trades a bunch of players or loses them for nothing and then can't replace them and adds Russell Westbrook. It's rough,
Were they asking about the Bucks or the Nuggets? Because I mean,
or yeah, sorry, I meant the Bucks, but
because it also
I mean, the
applies
Nuggets
to
a
the
little bit
Bucks,
too, but
the Bucks and the Nuggets, and
I just think
look,
in
like,
this
frankly,
NBA with the new sort of tax
I was
stuff,
just going to say
it's going to be harder to keep these high-end teams together for a very long time. And so you're going to have these, I think the time of dynasties might sort of be over unless you get like some sort of black swan event, like Kevin Durant joining the Warriors. And it's just like, okay, they're so overwhelmingly talented at the top that it sort of doesn't matter if they lose some back-end role players, like they can figure it out.
Yeah, except, yeah, I'm really kind of curious, how people feel about this conversation and the notion of like relative panicking and how, like, because people were saying like panic when the Lakers are 5 games under 500. At that point, it's not time to panic. It's time to start selling. Like, you weren't going to gain 5 games. You know how, like, all right, so if you're 5 games under 500, 5 games under 500 by the end of the season would be what? 30, how many games? 37 and whatever it is, right?
37 and 45.
Yeah. Right? Is that how you do that?
Wait, no, that's definitely not how you do that. 39 and 45.
Yeah.
No, that's 3 games under 500. I can't do math. Stop trying to have me do math on the air.
I'm saying though that like making up a 5-game under 500 gap up to the point where you need to be, because all right, so the Lakers won 47 games. That means they're 5 games over 500 last year, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if you just subtract,
maybe, as far as I know, I'm not going to check your math. To me, that sounds right.
So it's 37. If 5 games under 500 would be a 37 win team at the end of the season. And if you're saying that, like, at any point, the Lakers, again, without any real roster change or tweaks to approach here, would somehow go for 41. So it'd be 36 wins. See, look at me go. I'm an English major. But like, if you're telling me that, like,
I might be even less qualified to do math.
But if you're saying that, like, all right, 36, jumping somehow from a 36 win team up to a 47 win team, that now becomes a 10-game swing that you're talking about here. And at that point, right, like, if in order to merely get back to where the Lakers were last year. So if you have expectations that the Lakers would be better than they were last year, now you're talking about 5 games on top of that. That's like, a 15 or whatever game swing from at some point being 5 games under 500. As soon as you're 5 games under 500 in this Western Conference, it's time to consider selling. So, like, if you're going to be 5 games under 500 at any point this season, that's not time to panic. That's when reality has set in, and the panicking should have happened way sooner, right? So, like, that's what I'm trying to figure out. Like, all right, how are we defining?
I did not understand any of the math you just did there.
It made sense in my brain. Okay,
yeah, that was like that. I don't even think that was right, but I don't know where you were going with it, but yeah,
well,
I don't know.
edibles aren't legal here in Texas, so it couldn't have been that.
All I heard was there are a lot of, like, if the Lakers lose a lot of games and then they can't win a lot of games, there's less games for them to win if they're losing games, and so then they have to make up the losses. And
no, but I'm saying, all right, so because
okay.
all right, somebody set up here. Where is it?
All right. Let's go to the comments to check your math.
No, I'm saying, where's the piece? Because
Can
I asked
someone
at
in
the
the
very
co-
top,
Does
when is
someone in
it
the
time to
comments have a
panic?
calculator? Can you help us out, please?
And now the comment is gone. This is awesome. But somebody said that the time to panic would be when they're 5 games under 500. So without even doing the math, let's ignore the math here, right?
Yeah, we probably should have started with
Let's
that.
ignore the math. Let's ignore the math.
This is the worst podcast segment ever.
Yeah. But let's ignore the math here altogether and say if they are 5 games under 500, like right now, the Philadelphia 76ers are 1-6. Like if you're saying to me that the 76ers are not panicking right now,
the early polling in Philadelphia is not great.
yeah. And so like but like it was bad before this, right? They were panicking before they arrived at the point where they are right now, where they're 1-6, right? And that's where I'm saying, like, at what point does it become time to panic before you arrive at where the Philadelphia 76ers are now, where it's like, shit, this season might already be tanked.
Well, I'm pretty bad at math, but I don't think the Lakers can mathematically end up where the Sixers are now. Like, I don't think the NBA is going to subtract wins. So
Yeah.
I think safe from that, pretty sure. But as you all just saw, I'm not that good at math. So it's totally possible that I'm wrong there.
I'm just looking at our comments right now, and it's so much addition and subtraction.
Look, I went into this field because I was told there would be no math. Okay. I'm not good at math. I did not inherit that gene. It's just like without a calculator, I'm hopeless. So it just is what it is. But I will say a lot of this just comes down to narratives, right? And it's like the Sixers, they have been bad the whole season. And so their fan base is, of course, going to be like, well, we suck, but the Lakers started out the season looking really good. And so I think there's this way that you can get it stuck in your mind. It's like, well, I mean, the good version of the team, that's the real team, the one that was winning. And then this other one, they just struggled. They just got to figure out how to get back to that. But when really we see every year, there's some teams that start hot and then tail off. And there's some teams that start slow and then catch back up and regress upwards to the mean. And, I think that this is like a sort of boring answer, but I think the Lakers are mediocre. And we just saw them happen to get their wins out of the way first and, take advantage of some matchups. And then now they've had a few letdowns. And, this is about the best case scenario, I would assume, in terms of pace for this roster is like about 500, maybe a little above, because there is still, they straight up, they have 4 non-NBA players at the back end of their at the back end of the roster taking up space. And, they have maybe the worst backup center situation in the league. And, it's just like, there's very clear flaws in this roster.
Yeah, and frankly, that's all that matters, and it offers us, a nice smooth segue, because that's how I would define all of this show, nice and smooth. But the second part of the show that I wanted to talk about today, I wanted to run through the Lakers roster here and try to identify how many definite NBA players that they have on it. Right? How many? What could go wrong? So we start at the top of the roster, where you have Anthony Davis, LeBron James, Austin Reeves, Rui Hachimura, and D'Angelo Russell. Those are 5 definite NBA players.
Yeah, right? I would agree. All 5 starters are NBA players. Yes.
Definite NBA players. Like players who would have a role on any NBA team. Like if D'Angelo Russell walked into the Boston building right now, they would still find a way to get him some minutes, right? And Boston is the best and deepest roster.
I mean, they'd have 2 Derek Whites at that point. So it's,
it's such a trip watching D'Lo play. I keep on thinking that he's bald because of the blonde hair. And I'm like, man, he really committed.
I saw somebody
who
got mad at him earlier this year say, get the Targaryen off the court. And that made me laugh very hard.
Yeah, so let's continue down that list. All right. And I'm just reading based on the order that Basketball Reference has them in. Dalton Connect, definite NBA player right now. You think?
You know, probably, yeah, I'd say so.
Yeah.
I mean, there have been some rough moments. He's a rookie. It's kind of hard to be like, oh, rookie, surefire NBA player. But yeah, I think he's been an NBA player. That's fair.
Yeah. All right. So the next one here is Jackson Hayes.
I mean, barely.
Barely. The next one here is Max
He'd
Christie.
like, at most teams, like, he'd still make like their like 14th or 15th roster spot, even if you were really good.
Yeah. Although in the Hayes case, we don't know how much longer he'll be an NBA player.
Yeah. Well,
So
God willing.
you have that. Max Christie.
Oh man, this is a tough one. Not this year. He hasn't been.
No, I don't think so either.
No, I mean, I think he could be an NBA player. If you would have asked me this going into the season, I would have been like, yeah, Max, he's going to be like their 7th or 8th best player, probably. No.
Yeah. And now we arrive. So Gabe Vincent is another one.
Gabe Vincent's an NBA player.
You think?
Yeah.
Harrison, I think on the season, he's taken about 10 more shots than you and me.
He's not out there to shoot.
I think he's made about 2 or 3 more shots than you and me on the
NBA
season.
level defender. He is an NBA player, even when his shot's not on.
But like, you have to be an elite defender in order to be all right. So I guess that's a difference. In a positive impact player and an NBA player are 2 different things.
Yeah.
But he's not a positive impact NBA player.
Not this season. He hasn't.
If we whittle it down, if we make that the standard, Harrison, the Lakers have 5 positive impact NBA players.
Well, no, I mean, they're undefeated when Bronny plays, so that's at least 6.
It's true. The next one on the list is Cam Reddish. Well, the next one technically is Bronny, but we know he isn't one, so we'll just go ahead and skip off of that. But yeah, Cam.
No, not really. I mean,
no. All right, Vanderbilt.
Yeah, he's an NBA player when he's healthy. So yeah, he is.
If he's healthy. And then after that, so it's Armel Traore, 2-way player. Christian Wood. I don't know if
Christian
he'll be
Wood's
in the NBA,
NBA
next
player.
year. I don't know if he'll be in the NBA next year.
But that's like a mentality thing. Like, he has like enough skills to be in the NBA.
Okay. All right. Jalen Hood-Schifino.
No, not right now.
And then you round out the rest of it. Quincy Oliveri, 2-way player. Christian Coloco, 2-way player, and then Maxwell Lewis is the last one on there.
No.
So if we go through all of that list, we have the starting 5, which good to know that those guys are all NBA players.
Yeah, always a good sign. Hey, if your first 5 are all NBA players, off to a good start with the roster, I would say.
The next closest one to that is Gabe Vincent.
Can you imagine if like teams? It's like, yeah, one of our starters probably not an NBA player. It's like, yeah, you're going to be tanking this year.
That's how Monty Williams felt about Jaden Ivey last year.
Yeah. When it turned out Killian Hayes was not an NBA player.
So we have the Lakers have 6 NBA players on their roster right now. 6.
Oh, you're not counting Vando because he's hurt.
Because he's hurt.
Yeah.
I mean,
7 if you count Gabe Vincent.
No, I have the starting 5.
Okay.
And then we said Gabe was the next one. Who's the other one?
I think we agreed that Jackson was, right?
Okay. But like you're talking about, all right, so he's a 15th man NBA player.
Yeah.
All right. So you have 5.
He's a 12th to 13th man. Like, if we're just saying just on talent, like, and like ability level, whatever, there's 30 centers in the league that are basically exactly Jackson Hayes' ability level. It's like a tall guy who can kind of move and like can dunk a little bit.
And in terms of like positive impact players, though, they have 5.
Yeah.
5. Harrison, how many positive impact players do you think the Celtics have? Like how many positive impact players do you think that the average NBA team with, let alone with like playoff aspirations and deep playoff run aspirations, like does a team have normally?
It's more than 5.
It's usually about like
8
or 9.
Sorry, the comments are bringing up Dalton. Dalton, should be in there.
But are we sure he's a positive impact guy right now?
I think he is.
Okay. So
He's
then
been a
you're
positive
saying
impact
6
in
then.
yeah.
But last night he played 9 minutes.
Well, that's on the idiot head coach for not trusting his young guard more.
Man, I feel like I've heard that stuff before.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't know. Like this is the, and again, it brings me back to like the notion of like whether or not we should be panicking and stuff like that, how we should feel. But I didn't have very high hopes coming into the season. So
The
I'm not
Lakers roster
necessarily
is basically
panicking, but
like,
I had already accepted that they're probably not going to be as good as people hope that they are this year.
have you ever seen like the poorly drawn horse meme where it's like
Yeah.
it starts out like great and then by the end it's like a stick figure? Like that's
Yeah.
sort of this Lakers roster. It's like, you know,
Except like you're talking about like only the head is perfectly drawn. Everything else
well,
is
yeah, like literally a third of it. So like just the ass. You know, it's like in
just
the
a
meme, but then
perfectly drawn
the rest
ass.
of it, like the stick figure head is like Bronny and Maxwell Lewis. You know, it's
Yeah, I like and look, like this is a positive sentiment or a popular sentiment, right? Rob Pelinka needs to be fired. I could care less who's coaching. Like this is the thing. Last night you had JJ Redick saying how he needs to reevaluate the rotation and how Cam Reddish earned himself minutes. That is now back-to-back coaches who have had to like play Cam Reddish, and it's a direct result of roster mismanagement and asset mismanagement, right? Like the other day, I was talking about Jaylen Hood-Schifino, and I was talking about like the asset management that went on there, where the Lakers could have turned Mo Bamba and Malik Beasley and Jaylen Hood-Schifino's that pick that eventually became Jaylen Hood-Schifino. They could have used all three of those assets and added a $20 million definite positive impact player to this roster. And instead, all three of those assets are essentially going to expire, especially relative to how valuable they were at one point. And like that's how you arrive at a roster now where yes, that is a perfectly drawn ass on one end of this horse. But on the other end of it, it is like it's missing an eye. I don't know if anybody has ever watched like a 5-year-old draw a horse before. I have. Avery tries it all the time. She loves unicorns. It's a disaster, like those like, it's cute as hell. And I love that she writes her name on it. She says to daddy, all that stuff, but it's not a horse. It's not a horse.
I love it. Like any other podcaster, they tell a story about their kids. They're like, "Oh, I just love them so much. They're the light of my life." You're like, "My daughter's shitty at art."
She's 5. Like nobody looks at their 5-year-old kid's drawing. He's like, that is objectively good art. Nobody, not a single person.
Yeah, but most of them lie about it. They
What's
don't go
point?
on like a live
She's
with
not
hundreds
here.
of people and be
This
like,
is
"Yeah, my
documented for future use." She'll never find this show.
I just want to. Off-season pod. We're gonna do like the 5 like admissions you've made about Avery that are gonna come back to haunt her the most in high school. Like,
If somebody compiles that list, I will. I will let that person come on the show and give me that list. I'll tell you what. All right, let's go ahead and I want to have some fun with this one. I've had a lot. Look, the whole point of this was to laugh at how ridiculous the situation the Lakers currently find themselves in. And what better way to laugh at ridiculousness than to talk about Jaylen Hood-Schifino, who
yes, when you had that up there, I thought that the Schifino interest subhead thing, I thought that was like left over from your show last night, and you had like made Raj talk about like why teams would be interested in Jaylen.
No, he was already in a bad enough mood. I wasn't going to do that to him. But apparently, according to Jake Fisher of Bleacher Report, he is saying that apparently there are teams that are interested in Jaylen Hood-Schifino. There haven't been for the last 2 years, but apparently now there are. I don't think that those teams are interested in Jaylen the player. It is just the tax savings that they would incur, because he's an expiring now. But the teams I think that were listed there was Atlanta was one of them. I think Brooklyn was another one of them. I I keep thinking about the Spurs, to be completely honest. Like it would be so Spursy of them to get Jaylen in-house, develop him, and then turn him into an actual NBA player just to stick a middle finger up to the Lakers.
It was Utah with the third team.
Utah. So all teams, by the way, that like the Lakers had previously negotiated with, and Jaylen was a part of all of those talks previously. So as far as like him being expiring or changing anything, or if this is any new kind of development, I don't believe it is. I'll have Jake on the show at some point because I haven't had him on in a while.
Jake, defend your honor.
Yeah.
And explain to me why this report is right.
Yeah. Well, I just want to clarify because, the intrigue, is it just connecting dots back to when they were interested in the guy last year? Or is it a matter of like, no, they are actually interested in him now that he's expiring, or any of that stuff? I haven't heard any change in the sentiment there personally, because you're talking about a $4 million expiring contract, like, or a 3 and change expiring contract. That just doesn't do much for most teams. So we'll see, but I don't know, Harrison, like, the Schifino interest. Do you believe it, or do you think that's something that like the Lakers are leaking now? Is like, no, I swear, look,
got multiple bidders. Get their offers in, everyone. Before, always a good sign if you're leaking. If there's interest about your players leaking like a month and a half before the December 15th unofficial sort of trade deadline opening. It's like when most teams can't even really make moves because like half their roster just got signed last summer, and it's just like, yeah, no, we're doing an auction. Jaylen Hood-Schifino, who wants him? Or last year's
Maxwell
first round
Lewis, anybody? Like, they need to open up these roster spots. All right, if you look at the available free agents, Lonnie Walker is the most popular one. He would help immediately. He is already definitely
he just
better.
Went over and signed in EuroLeague, right? I mean,
yeah, but he can come back anytime between now and like February.
Oh, okay. I thought it was only after February he could come back. I misunderstood.
No, I think after February, if it's after February, then they're getting ready for their playoffs.
They want him for the EuroLeague play. Yeah,
okay, so like if he isn't on an NBA roster by then, they would. But I might have it inversed.
I mean, I would say that as far as the JHS thing, like I believe the report, number one, because it's Jake and like he's reliable, and like number two, because I think that the situation has changed a little bit, where it's one thing to say, hey, we're not interested in Jaylen Hood-Schifino. Like, Rob, you can do your whole used car salesman shtick about how this is like sort of like an extra first round pick. But like, we don't view him that way. We didn't take him in the first round. Like, this is not the same thing to us as a future first round pick. And when the Lakers are like, hey, we need a roster spot. Does anybody want Jaylen Hood-Schifino? And like, just like to take a flyer on him basically for free. Like, the Lakers aren't asking for a first round pick back for him. They're asking for maybe like a second
conditional second rounder.
Like they're just asking for something to legally free up the roster spot and make the trade work. And so being interested in Jaylen Hood-Schifino at that price point is very different, even though I made the joke yesterday, oh, now Atlanta wants JHS. It's like, I mean, Atlanta being interested in him now and the Jazz being interested, the Nets in their rebuilding situation, the Nets and Jazz both make a lot of sense just because it's like, hey, why not take like a flyer on a younger guy, see if he can play? You're going to have lots of minutes that don't mean anything at the end of this year. Like, just go see if he can, with enough reps, sort of show you the potential that made him a first round pick in the first place. And, like, I think that's why you're seeing the interest now. It's not because all of a sudden teams are like, oh man, I think it's time for us to get in on a JHS, or, oh, I want to really save this $3.6 million really badly. It's like, can we get this sort of distressed asset first round pick for free? Sure. It's the same reason you saw multiple teams trade for Cam Reddish, earlier in his career. And we've seen sort of how that goes. And that's normally how it goes for these sort of, frankly, looking like a bust of first round picks, is like a couple more teams take flyers on them. You saw it with James Wiseman, where 2 teams traded for him. He was obviously, number 1 pick versus where Hood-Schifino went. But, and then you still get the veterans minimum deal, make good at, for your 4th opportunity and stuff, just because when you have that high of pedigree, you get more chances.
Yeah. only concern there is that like the Lakers reached for Jaylen when they drafted him there. Like, I think most mocks that I had seen had him later in the first round, and I don't know. Like Cam Reddish was like a top 10 pick. That is very different pedigree than
Yeah.
a player that the Lakers surprised teams by drafting. Right. So, when they did, and that
Yeah,
was at
fair enough. But
17,
like
10
a
whole spots
projected
later.
first round pick that they're like, well, I mean, and look, we have to admit, this has been a horrible development situation for Jaylen, like where
The
there's
Lakers are
no
great at
minutes
horrible
available.
development situations. They aren't good at developing
No,
players.
yeah, I'm not. I'm just saying that, like, if you were to look at it through the lens of a team saying, like, here's why we'd take a flyer on this guy. It's like, well, we don't have anything to play for anyway. We know a lot of guys on our current roster suck anyway, or like
Yeah.
aren't in our future plan. So, like, let's give this guy that, like, theoretically was seen as a first round pick some leeway, and maybe we get a free first round pick out of it. Maybe he turns into like our backup point guard of the future, or like, like a role player for us in some form or capacity. It's like, are the chances of that are probably low, but they're higher than, like sort of just playing out the year and not taking a flyer on him. Like there's no downside if you're just getting him for free and you're a team that doesn't have much going on anyway.
It's funny, in baseball, if the Dodgers become interested in a prospect, it like automatically raises that prospect's like opportunities and options moving forward, because the Dodgers have been so good on those margins and finding talent and developing that talent and stuff. It's going to be interesting to see with the Lakers, because I do think their scouting department is good, but their development department is bad, right?
Well, their development department right now is TBD because it's an entirely new coaching staff. We have no idea how good their development is right now.
Yeah, I mean, I guess,
The
but
last
they
couple
just gave
years,
up on all their previous projects. Like, what development team like walks in and the Lakers basically just quit on the previous projects of the last regime? It's the same.
which previous
It's the
project?
same. Well, I'm so Jaylen, they just quit on trying to develop Jaylen.
Well,
Like
because they
that
had
is
nothing
over.
invested. Yeah, I mean, they clearly don't think he's good. I mean, I think that's like I think that's the conclusion. Is this player development department is like, look, I'm not God. What do you want me to
Yeah,
do?
but that's the thing though, is that like, for one thing, you're making that decision off of 21 NBA games, which is kind of crazy.
Yeah.
To arrive at that, when like the alternative is having him on your roster next year for like $4 million.
Yeah.
So like, I don't know. I think the way that I would kind of put the Lakers, and I think we've talked about this previously, but like the Lakers are a great organization if you are very self-driven. Like
Yeah.
it's a great organization if like they love to talk about like empowering their players and letting their players push themselves as far and as hard as they want, right? That's why Kobe is Kobe, because he, and LeBron is LeBron, and they've had the success as Lakers as they've had, because they are just that kind of crazy driven. But if you have like, if you aren't like, if you need a kick in the butt, or if you need to be guided through like the beginning of your career, that's where, I think the Lakers development team and development program really tends to struggle. And maybe that's just the case with everybody, that like in the NBA, like you better be that kind of driven anyway. But yeah, I think like with you look back at like the Anthony Browns, you look at Jaylen, you look at even Max here,
Well, but
like,
it's hard to draw a through line through all those guys because there's been wildly different coaching staffs in place for all that. Like, I'm not saying don't criticize the Lakers or whatever. Like,
Mhm.
clearly the last player development team did not do a very good job outside of Austin Reeves, and I guess like Rui got better under Phil. Like Phil Handy was good, clearly, but I think he ended up he was doing less player dev by the time that he
Yeah.
was, sort of done there, and they had him like in charge of like scheme type stuff, is my understanding. And so it was like, I mean, their player development the last several years has not been all that great. Like, you talked about all the guys that have went on to like ended up contributing elsewhere. Like, so like we don't know ultimately with this player development team if they are going to be a team that is able to sort of develop like I saw very funny with the Shams tweet, them already trying to take credit for if Dalton is a player development win.
He's like 26.
I think
He's
he's
24.
24. But
Yeah.
it's also like he's been with you for like 3 months. Like, what did you
Yeah.
develop in him? Like, it's like, oh man, he didn't know how to play basketball, but we taught him all the rules, and we were able to turn this dude perfect trick shot hooper into an NBA player.
Yeah. And I think another example of this is Austin, actually, like where he is, by all accounts, very self-driven. He does
Very
put in
self-driven.
a ton of work outside of what's expected of him as a Laker and stuff. And like those players, they're going to succeed anywhere. But I think the Lakers specifically, like, they'll give you those opportunities even further because they really buy into players who they see that from. But if the Lakers sense, and you asked for a through line, the through line is Pelinka, right? Like
For
the
a
through
lot of
line is
those,
the
yeah.
guy.
Not Anthony, not going back to Anthony Brown, but for a lot of
Yeah.
it, yes, the through line is Pelinka.
Like somebody else mentioned THT, like and how his development kind of stalled out too. Like as soon as the Lakers kind of catch a whiff of you aren't maniacally self-driven, I think that's when they start to like look elsewhere. And
Yeah.
maybe they like I saw somebody else saying that like the Lakers give up a little too quickly here. LeBron to Kobe to LA, right? We do quit on young players too early. That's what it takes to win championships. It's like, I mean, look at those players that, in Memphis. Scottie Pippen Jr. is having a great, kind of second stage of his career.
And
As I
I'll
think,
say hand up, I did not think he was an NBA player. Like I would not have, like, I didn't criticize the Lakers when they let him go. I was just like, this is your stereotypical, like, I've seen a million of these guys in the G League. They're too undersized for the NBA, but like they're a perfect G League caretaker, floor manager, whatever. But he like has gotten better and become like built himself into an NBA player.
and and I think the thing there, like with Scotty, is that like they've always had way too many guards, so he just doesn't. He never really
Yeah.
never was going to get an opportunity because Rob just perpetually chases these, combo guard, bucket getters who wind up stopping the Scottie
Well, and
Pippens of
if
the
you're,
world and the
look, if
Alex
you're going to
Carusos of the
believe,
world. From
if you're going
what's
to
that?
believe Scottie Pippen Jr., there was also a coach maybe that didn't believe in him the most while he was with the Lakers.
There's that too.
Yeah.
Darvin Ham is having the worst first season off of being a head coach I think I've ever
What do
seen.
you mean? He's having a great year. He got to go back home, already owned a house in Milwaukee. He's getting paid to not coach the Lakers, and he gets a salary from the Bucks.
Yeah.
He's having a great year.
Except he's
Everything's
getting
coming up,
shit
Darvin.
on by like all kinds of
Also,
people.
like, everybody's like, well, the Bucks, maybe they would fire Doc, but also it's like Darvin is the next guy up on the bench. So you think Doc brought him in just to have more job security? Like, Doc, it does do whatever he like necessary to, like, he's like talking to ownership, going over the GM to like get more personnel power. Like, I actually, talking this out loud, I literally think he might have brought Darvin in just so that they felt less secure in firing him.
I could see it. You know what? He's a very smart guy, Doc.
But can I give you my conspiracy theory on Jalen Hood-Schifino, though? My
Yeah.
actual sort of so there's been sort of a lot of talk like the last like week or so about like the draft situation that sort of led to him being on the Lakers, and whether it was a Rob pick, whether it was a Bus Bros pick or whatever. Like, if you are to believe that it was a Bus Bros pick, then like I wouldn't Rob cutting bait on him this quick be its own sort of form of job preservation and being like, well, these guys can't develop talent, like they aren't that good at it, like we got to get rid of their first round pick already, so like why would we give them more power? They clearly whiffed in the draft. Why are you all wanting the Bus Bros to be in charge?
So I don't know which story you're referring to. From what I heard, the Lakers were getting ready to draft Kobe Buffkin, the guy who went to Atlanta, like the pick before. And after Buffkin went to Atlanta, they were left scrambling because that was the closest thing to consensus that they had in the draft room was Kobe Buffkin. And then, from what I heard, like if we're talking about like Bus Bros pick and stuff like that, like the people who wanted like Cam Whitmore, who's a really, Jaime Jaquez and Brandon Podziemski like weren't really on their radar. They didn't even bring Jaquez in for an individual
Those
workout.
are the ones that are rough in retrospect, like for everyone, for the front office, for the scouting guys, like for like the fact that there were like no credible reports that like those guys were close, It's like, I mean, I know a lot of teams, I get it, a few teams passed on them, but it is like, that's pretty rough.
Well, the Jaquez one hurts particularly because he was at UCLA.
You would think that's
You
the
know,
one guy Rob would have caught, you know?
like
Like it
like he was at UCLA and he played so many big March Madness games that like that was the guy who I figured Rob would quote unquote scout because he happened to
yeah,
be on TV
he's a
anyway.
winner. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's why it really surprised me when I heard that the Lakers didn't even bring him in for an individual workout. So from what I heard though, so like Buffkin gets drafted and then like the scouting department, from what I heard, wanted Whitmore, but the higher powers at be did not want Whitmore because of his health concerns coming out of the draft. So the next, like after Whitmore, the next kind of name that was on everybody's list and the closest thing to consensus, because like this is the thing with the way that Rob is kind of operating at this point. He wants the closest thing to consensus as he can. Rob will never like I saw that it was aggregated that I painted it out to be that it was just Rob who overruled everybody and took Jalen Hood-Schifino. That is not how I've heard it. That is not how Rob is going to operate because he's not going to put himself out on that kind of a
No,
limb with
that would
no
seem out
other
of
body shields
character
in front of him.
to me. Yeah, because he traditionally, like, even go back to even building the championship roster, he was giving credit to LeBron and AD for how much they helped him in securing that move. And when
Right.
they brought in Russ, he was giving credit to those guys on like how much they all got together and decided that they all wanted to play together, and all the leaks about how much those guys, like, he's always going to give himself cover in that I didn't make this decision alone, so you can't just get mad at me.
Yeah. And so like the notion that Jaylen was picked because Rob overruled everybody, that isn't how it
Yeah.
played out. But he was definitely more on the side of Jaylen than Cam because of the health concerns. And he's also the archetype of player that Rob loves acquiring. He loves the
Bad?
buckets.
Oh,
There's that too. But like he loves buckets. He loves combo guards. Like it's been a clown car of combo guards under Rob Pelinka. It's just like the line never freaking stops. And
I
so
honestly, I feel bad about that one. Jaylen seems like a nice kid. Like he was very nice to Raj, apparently. Like I just like you teed me up too well with the lob there. Just threw it right over the plate.
yeah, I don't know. But I look, I also, frankly, am really rooting for Fino to get another opportunity elsewhere because I don't trust in, like how many times, Harrison, were they talking about like how they were going to gamify the
I was just
development
going to bring that
process?
up. Maybe they haven't been. Well, JJ's been busy this summer. He hasn't had time to build the app yet. He's been too busy watching film at the car wash. But
Yeah.
like they clearly have not built the app to gamify player development through phone-based deliverables yet. And once they do that,
Yeah. But like they kept on going on and on and on about the focus on player development, and they didn't have a head of training until right before the season started, which means you didn't have
well,
a head
that's
of
how
trainer
focused they
through
were on it,
all of the
Anthony. They had
summer.
to take their time to hire the right one. They wanted to make sure that they left no stone unturned in
Yeah.
search for that player development person. So they hired them right at, many people say that this is the most important time for player development, right before the season. Like
Yeah.
right when the season starts. That's when player development begins, not during the off season. Players famously not in the gym during that time. Don't add to
They
their game. Don't
fired
work
they
on it.
fired the guy who coached the Las Vegas Summer League team like after he coached the team. So like any progress that was made while they had the those games going on just wiped away because they hit reset and they fired last year's G League coach to bring in somebody else now. Like it's just kind of a
Yeah,
mess.
the
And
guy from the
again,
legendary, one of Woj's final posts of the guy looking like he was being served with divorce papers. That coach, I'm blanking on his name right
yeah,
now.
yeah. Anyway, we've rambled for long enough, and I'm gonna go ahead and end it there. But yeah, I'm
Why, is
rooting,
there
really
something
like
else going on
legitimately
today?
rooting. What's that?
Why, is there something else going on today you got to pay attention to?
I do actually have to go vote. Like, I haven't been able to go yet. And so I do like have to run over there and stand in the line and all that stuff. So I do have to go do that. But other
This
than
is so
that,
on
no, I
brand
don't.
for you that you save this until like 5:30 on election day or 4:30, I guess, right? Where you are
Yeah, 4:30.
to vote. You're like, well, look, I know I don't work a traditional 9 to 5, but I want to respect the people that do by showing up when they all do to the polls.
Well, the problem is Avery had 2 days off this week, Monday and Tuesday. So I've had both of the kids here on Monday and Tuesday. Early voting ended last Friday, and I wasn't paying attention to when I should be doing
I respect
early
the
voting.
honesty.
And so now I'm like, I literally went there yesterday hoping that maybe I could just like slide in a vote or whatever. It's like, no, you got to come back tomorrow. So I'm going to brave that. Surely it's nice and peaceful out here in rural Texas. All right. That is going to do it though for this episode of the Lakers Lounge. Again, as a reminder, focus on yourself today and this evening and log off whenever you can. And, we'll get through all of whatever is to come on the other side of it. I am not going to predict who is winning the presidency. LeBron to Kobe LA. Not doing that.
Only if you super comment. If you super comment, he will give his endorsement.
Oh shit, we do have super comments. Shoot. All right.
For $5 only, for just $5, you can get Anthony to tell you who to vote for.
That's who to vote for. Whoever says fuck Boston. All right. Justin Tyndall wrote earlier, sell the team. Bron and AD have to bust their ass to make the plan. Jeannie is an unserious owner. If the Pelicans took our pick, Bronny was the offseason. All objectively true. Takes. I mean, not objectively.
They added JJ Redick.
Yeah, Bronny and JJ was the offseason. And Justin
Dalton
also wrote,
I still have high hopes for Dalton. I know I was like I was just debating whether or not we want to call a rookie like a surefire positive NBA contributor, but I like Dalton a lot from what I've seen.
Me too. I think he should have played more the other night. It worries me that like JJ has already decided he doesn't play in the second
but it's the first and third.
Yeah, the first and third quarter. Like he's already decided there are moments that we just aren't going to see this guy on the team.
Yeah.
So or on the court. Justin also wrote, Anthony, I remember you saying Pelinka got an extension after Westbrook's first season. What has changed with Jeannie? Absolutely nothing. Yeah, I mean, like remember how they like didn't announce it until it was leaked?
Always a good sign when you don't feel like you can leak the extension.
they Pelinka gets extended and all that stuff, and there's like, yeah, like we just send out an email, we'll just move on.
Yeah.
Can you imagine? Like, do you think they'll even? All right. What are the chances that Rob already has his extension right now?
Well, I think didn't he just get extended off the Western Conference Finals thing? Because I think that one they announced. If I remember correctly.
No, so he has his current contract ends after next season. I think that's the extension you're talking about. And
I think it's entirely possible that he already has the secret extension because he's not moving like a man who's GMing for his job.
Right. Could you? Oh man, I need to start digging. If I get to be the one who breaks that one, they already hate me.
They're gonna news dump that today.
Oh my god.
5 p.m. Pacific.
We already got the Embiid, the like pre-election evening Embiid news drop. The Pelinka extension news drop, like right after, like as soon as the president, the next president of the United States is like announced and formalized.
We're like, I've seen enough. 4 more years of Rob Pelinka.
By the way. What do you think will be more polarizing, Rob's extension or the next president?
No comment.
All right. On that note, that is going to do it here for this episode of the Lakers Lounge. I'm Anthony Irwin. That was Harrison Fagan. Please do take care of yourself tonight, and try to focus on the things that do bring joy to your life. All of that good stuff. The plan as of now, I think the Lakers play again tomorrow. So we'll be here in the lounge after that game. And until then, and until the next time you guys hear from us, have a great rest of your evening. Make somebody else's, and I will talk to you tomorrow. Bye, everybody.
Bye, everyone.